We are talking Nails. This one directed by Dennis Bartok, who also co-wrote this with Tom Abrams. And this one stars modern screen queen Shauna Macdonald, who you may know from classic horror movies such as The Descent, also the sequel to that movie, and Howl as well, both of which I absolutely adore. So here she is in Nails, along with one of my favourite comedians, Ross Noble. I don't know if US audiences will be as familiar. He's a great kind of like sort of stand-up comedian who really just does stuff off the fly rather than kind of being scripted. But he's not playing a comedic role here. It's more of a dramatic role. But anyway, let's talk about the film here. This follows a character called Dana, played by Shauna Macdonald, and she is seriously injured after a hit-and-run accident. It kind of leaves her paralysed. Her throat is damaged. She can't talk. She's got like a kind of a breathing tube, and she has to kind of communicate via a computer like Stephen Hawking's. And she's in this hospital. However, this hospital appears to have somewhat of a dark past. There seems to be some kind of malevolent spirit, which is kind of this spirit of this guy who was once a patient there, and then who worked there, and nicknamed Nails because he used to collect the fingernails from various kind of children that used to be at the hospital before taking his own life. And it seems to be haunting Dana, but no one kind of believes her because no one can see it other than her, because she had this kind of near-death experience. So that's your kind of your movie here. So let's talk about a little bit in detail about what worked and what didn't work with Nails. We're going to start off with the positives, because there are two huge positives of this movie. Number one, Shauna Macdonald. She is one of the most underrated actresses working today, I think. This role is particularly tough because she can't speak through most of it. She's having to communicate through this kind of computer, but I still think she acts the hell out of it. She was totally engaging in Descent. You know, she was pretty damn decent in a movie Howl. She's been in a whole bunch of stuff, and she does a great job here of really kind of making this character someone with real kind of layer and depth and stuff, even though she can barely talk in it. So I thought her performance was great, and she really does prove that she is worth the money in the bank if you are a horror filmmaker in the UK. And also I really liked Ross Noble in this movie because he plays this kind of like this everyman kind of like nurse / maintenance man who just comes across as such a kind of a real character, a typical kind of guy who you would just see working in a place like this. You can kind of shoot the shit with, have a bit of a conversation, who, you know, he's kind of like quite a nice guy, but he has his own stuff going on. Thought very, very kind of realistic characters. So both those actors I thought were pretty good. And some of the supporting characters as well, like the husband I thought was played quite well, but the actor there are pretty good. So that's your first major positive. Your second one, when we actually see the ghostly attacks, man, that stuff is nightmare fuel. It is pure horrifying images on screen that will absolutely chill you to the bone. Really well done kind of horror effects here. I feel that they were particularly disturbing, and I actually really loved the visuals of this character Nails, because he absolutely looks so damn creepy. Honestly, it will stick with you, this one. And he has these kind of weird like eyes that kind of you'll see coming before everything and anything else. Well, I thought he was really done. Now, some people might complain that, you know, he's maybe a bit CGI, and I think it looks worse when you look at it still, but when you see it in motion, I think it actually looks fine, to be, if I'm completely honest. I thought that was, the actual bits with him in it were really good. But what didn't work? Well, let's talk about those pesky negatives, because there's going to be a few. The main issue I have here is the story seems a bit wonky to me, that there's just like things that don't make sense, and kind of just like easy kind of like tropes that just seem to have been there for a plot point. For example, just one, but there's a few. There is, you know, Dana's character, the character of Dana, she's getting really paranoid that no one's going to believe her. So she has these cameras installed around her room in the hospital. And, well, for a start, the hospital seems unaware of this, first of all, so I don't know, you know, how they got permission, but anyway. But once she has that, the kind of like the hospital administrator is speaking to the husband and various people outside her room. But well, there's still a camera with a mic, but surely you've just installed them. You know that there's a microphone in there. I mean, it's not as if they were put there in secret. It's just like, Why would you have these kind of like private conversations? Things like this, just like they're done silly mistakes and silly kind of like plot points just to kind of like push the story along. We have this kind of weird, creepy psychiatrist that just seems to kind of like come out of nowhere just to be creepy. Just like small little things here and there that kind of don't make sense. The fact that the husband knows that his wife had meningitis when she was 3, but the wife doesn't remember that and remember what hospital she was in. It just seems like stupid little things here and there that kind of bugs me. And then additionally to that, some of the supporting cast I feel are quite weak as well. Like kind of like the administrator of the hospital, I felt was quite a weak performance, for example. And again, the psychiatrist just is like act creepy, you know. Plus, we kind of there are some things that we never really know the full extent of. We don't really know, we're never really told exactly what's gone on in regard to some of the backstory of this place. We kind of think, oh, you know, on one hand it could have been this, but on the other hand it could have been that. So you never know definitively about what's kind of happened. So it does fall into the trap of having a few kind of like typical kind of horror cliches here and there. But overall, despite its clearly flawed story, I actually still enjoyed this, mainly for the fact that those first two positives here, because they're such strong. And I really do feel that the actual, some of the ghost attacks here are so strong, with such a kind of, you know, intriguing, layered lead character, with a great performance by the actress. I feel I can kind of, for the most part, look past some of these kind of critiques that I may have of this. I actually had a lot of fun with this movie, although I do appreciate it has some flaws. It's annoying that these kind of like silly story elements really kind of weighed this movie down from being more of an intelligent story. It's a bit frustrating, I've got to say. But if you're a horror fan, you like kind of creepy hospitals, despite the fact they don't seem to have any staff there, you know, I feel you would like it. If you like things like, you know, your Grave Encounters, or there's not a found footage film, then you're going to get a kick out of it. I feel it kind of works and is pretty good in regards to some great horror moments that will kind of stick with you after watching it. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.